Hello.
Welcome to Cloud9's Wednesday webinar series. Cloud9 Infosystems is a boutique technology consulting firm focused on growing enterprises. We are a Microsoft Gold partner in cloud platform, data analytics, and application development. Cloud9 has launched Wednesday webinar series that take place alternate Wednesday from 1 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. Central Time. This week's topic is identity management using the Azure Active Directory. And today's speakers are Aniket Twani and Aman Karni. Now, Aman will take over.
Thank you, Jay. So today we'll be talking about identity management using the Azure Active Directory. The agenda for today's webinar would be, so we talk about what exactly is identity management. Next, we'll go on to discussing the basics, say what is Active Directory and what are domain controllers. Next, we'll talk about what is the Azure Active Directory, how an on-premise AD complements with the Azure AD. And lastly, we'll talk a little about Active Directory Connect, which is a tool which we'll be using in the demo. Followed up by summing it all up, we'll have a small hands-on demo which Aniket, my colleague, will be presenting. So moving on, what is identity management? Now, identity management is the organizational process for identifying, authenticating, and authorizing the users, so that the group of people, they have access to applications, systems, or networks, and you can associate the user rights and the restrictions with their established identities. Now, identity management, it includes authenticating the users and determining whether they have access to particular systems. ID management determines whether a user has access to the system, but it also sets the level of access and the permissions that the user has on a particular system. For instance, say a user may be authorized to access a system, but he may be restricted from some of its components. Now, the main goal of identity management is to ensure that only authenticated users are granted access to specific applications for which they are authorized. The importance of identity management would be, say it's an important part in organizations, basically because users are granted more access privileges than they are actually needed to perform their functions. Attackers can take advantage of these compromised credentials and they can gain access to the organization's network and the data. Using identity management, organizations can safeguard their corporate assets against many threats, including malware attacks, ransomware, and so on. Identity management systems can add an additional layer of protection by ensuring that the user access policies and rules, they are consistently applied across the organization. An IAM system, the access management system, can provide a framework that includes the policies, the technologies needed to support the management of electronic and digital identities. Many of today's IAM systems, they use federated identities, which is nothing but a single digital identity to be authenticated and stored across multiple disparate systems. Now, an IAM system can also be used to deploy single sign-on, so that you significantly decrease the number of passwords that the user needs. Combine that with multi-factor authentication and other security policies, and the users will have access to only the resources that they require to fulfill their roles. And the enterprise can overall reduce the risk of security breaches. Next, we'll talk about what is the Active Directory and the domain controllers. Now, Active Directory, it's a directory service that Microsoft developed for the Windows domain networks. A domain controller is a server that responds to security authentication requests within a Windows Server domain. It is a server on the Microsoft Windows network which is responsible for allowing host access to Windows domain resources. A domain controller is the centerpiece of the Windows Active Directory service. It authenticates the users, it stores the user account information, and it enforces security policies for the Windows domain. Moving on, we'll talk about the Azure Active Directory. Now, Azure Active Directory, this is Microsoft's multi-tenant, cloud-based directory and identity management service. Azure AD combines your core directory services, advanced identity governance, and application access management. For IT admins, Azure AD provides an affordable, easy-to-use solution such that you can give employees and business partners single sign-on access to thousands of cloud applications. Whereas for application developers, Azure AD lets you focus on building your application by making it fast, simple to integrate with world-class identity management solution so that it is used by millions of organizations around the world. It also has an additional suite of identity management capabilities including multi-factor authentication, device registration, self-service password protection, application usage monitoring, role-based access control, so on and so forth. Now, how an on-premise AD, that is a Windows AD, is different from a cloud-based AD, that is the Azure AD. Now, Azure AD is not intended to be the cloud version of on-premise. Both of them, the Azure AD as well as the Windows AD, they have some similarities, such as, say you have password synchronization between them. Now users and groups, they are synchronized to the Azure AD. Users can log onto both the on-premise and in the cloud, and the passwords are synchronized between the two. There is another feature called as password write back, wherein if a user changes their password within the Azure AD, they can have them written back onto the on-premise AD. We'll go through the differences that both of them bring to the table. Now, Azure does not offer the domain join feature. This is because Azure is primarily set about in the web. It is an environment which is void of traditional authentication protocols such as LDAP and Kerberos. But instead it relies on web authentication protocols which are SAML, WS, OAuth. Azure AD also has no group policy functionality, but your Azure devices can be managed by a service called Microsoft Intune. It offers features such as update management and remote wipe should a device ever be compromised. Now the bottom line is your server AD, so Windows AD, is first and foremost a directory service, whereas your Azure AD, that's an identity solution. Identity management is a critical element for today's organizations. Users within any organization utilize numerous cloud applications. When cloud applications first came into the picture, users had to authenticate into each application. It proved very inefficient and introduced security vulnerabilities. So cloud application vendors enforced different password policies. Then along came federated services. They offered single sign-on. Initially, this meant a cloud application would divert the authentication process back to the user's on-premise AD, wherein a configured federated server would authenticate the user to their local AD credentials. Adding on came identity as a service, which is what Azure AD is all about. So Azure AD handles the federation of hundreds of applications itself. It allows your AD users the ability to seamlessly jump from application to application as easily as traversing applications on their desktop. In generalization, Azure AD is a federation hub. Now Azure AD and Windows AD, they do not replicate each other. Instead, they complement them. And they offer the best services to the users today. Lastly, we'll move on to a tool called the Azure AD Connect. Now, Azure AD Connect will integrate your on-premise directories with Azure Active Directory. In a hybrid cloud environment, the AD admins can create users within their local on-premise AD and have them synchronized to Azure by an intermediary tool which is called the Azure AD Connect. Integrating your on-premise directories with the Azure AD makes your users productive because it provides a common identity for both your cloud and your on-premise resources. Well, those are the basic concepts that we will look into at the demo. So it was just a revision. Now I'll hand over to my colleague Aniket, who will walk you through the demo part of the webinar.
Hey, thank you, Aman. Yeah, that was quite a bit of explanation there. But it was really nice. You explained each and every component about Active Directory, on-premise directory pretty well. Thank you. Thank you for that. Hello all. So what we are going to do is I'm going to walk you through a very simple, straightforward demo here. What this demo does, what we are doing in this demo is basically we are trying to sync our on-prem domain controller, so users in our on-prem Active Directory, to Azure Active Directory using the tool called Azure AD Connect, which Aman just mentioned before. So this is basically the architectural overview of the demo. What this is saying is that we have an on-prem domain controller. This has an Active Directory installed in it. In this, we are going to, so this has the fully qualified domain name for this domain controller is, I think for the demo, we kept it on-prem demo.com, I think. Yeah, that's the domain controller's fully qualified domain name. We added a user called on-prem onto this domain controller. This is the first entity of the project, of this demo, sorry. The second entity is a VM. We are going to create a VM in Azure, which is basically going to host our AD Connect software. And it's going to be the middle link between syncing our on-prem and our Azure ADs together. And then the third is going to be an Azure AD. It's going to be a directory that we're going to create in Azure. We are going to be making, we're going to create a new user in that as well called AD Sync user, which basically we are going to use to sync both these services, both the Active Directories. So let me just, that's basically the flow of the demo. I'll just go ahead and show you guys. We already have installed all these things because what we have done is this on-prem device, the on-prem domain controller. For the purpose of this demo, we have installed this as a VM on Azure as well. You guys might not have to do that because you might already have an on-prem server, but we did it for this demo basically. So this is that on-prem. This is going to simulate your on-prem device basically. So ADVM, this is the virtual machine that we have created. This is the domain is on-prem demo.com, like I mentioned before. And we added a user called on-prem. It's very easy to add a user. You just go into, so from your server manager, you go into tools, into Active Directory users and computers. It opens up this screen, and then you just go ahead and add a new user. You provide all the credentials, a login name for the user, so something like say, if I say Aniket, so my login ID would be aniket@onpremdemo.com, or so that's what I did basically. I added an on-prem user, and what we're trying to do with this demo is we want to see if this syncs to our Active Directory in Azure. Okay. The next step of this demo is creating this small VM, which is going to be hosting our AD Connect software. We call that VM AD Connect. The first thing that we do once we create a new VM is that we have to point this to the domain on-prem demo.com, right? That's the first thing that we do. So the steps for that are basically we go into our network configurations, into properties, our IPv4 properties, and we add the preferred DNS, which points to the on-prem domain. Now this is the preferred. Now I'll just confirm it. So this is my on-prem device, and this is going to be my preferred DNS for my AD Connect VM, basically. Once we do that, your machine would reboot, your AD Connect machine would reboot, and that's expected. We have to do that. Followed by that, we also change so basically the machine is by default, it's in a work group. So we change it from a work group to point to the domain that we want it to. So that is on-prem demo.com. So once that is set up, the next step that we do in the demo is basically we go to our Azure. And in Azure, we create a directory called, so for this demo, we have created a directory called webinar demo. That's our Azure Active Directory. Now, how do you create a directory is also pretty straightforward. In your Azure portal, you go into create a resource, you go into security and identity, and then we create an Azure Active Directory. You give an organization name, we give it webinar demo, you can give it whatever your XYZ, whatever your company name is. And then you provide a domain name for this Azure directory as well. So for our webinar demo directory, the domain name that we have provided is my initials, that is ani8700.onmicrosoft.com. I'm not going to create this because I've already done that, and to just prove it, show it to you all. You see this? This is ani8700.onmicrosoft.com. Once I create this directory, I go into Azure Active Directory and we created a new user over here called AD Sync. It's very simple. You just say new user and you follow this entire setup. We give a name, we give a username. So now remember, all we have to remember when giving the username is that we give the entire username along with the domain name. So the username that we have given is something like adsync@ani8700.onmicrosoft.com. So you give the entire domain name, okay? And another thing that we need to make sure that we take care of is that the directory role of this AD Sync user should be that of a global administrator, okay? Once we set up these two things, the next thing for us to do is we go back into the AD Connect VM. We go into this AD Connect VM and we download the Azure AD Connect software. Okay, and this we can download from this link. We will provide you this link in the deck later on. But all you have to do is just go ahead and download this Azure Active Directory Connect software and run it like you would run any other installation. Now I've already run it, so I'll just show you the steps that we go through. We have it in the deck over here. Yeah. So basically, the moment you run the Azure AD Connect software, this is the page that's going to come up, and like you can see, it says here that your Azure Active Directory Connect integrates your on-premises, and your online directories. Basically, what we have been talking about. We are trying to sync our on-premise Active Directory to our Azure Active Directory. That's what this is going to do. You say continue, and then you have to connect to your Azure AD. Now, this is going to be the AD Sync account that we just created in Azure, and we provide the username and the password for that. Next step is to provide your on-prem username and password. So this was an admin that I had created before called demo. So I just provide the username saying on-prem demo. That is the domain name / / and then the admin name and the password. So once I provide that and then I walk through the entire configuration setup, once the configuration is complete, the sync should start. And as what we started off with is what we want to see is if that on-prem user that we added on our on-prem Active Directory, it should show up in our Active Directory in Azure. And like you can see here, this is the user that we had added, name being on-prem. This was the user, and it had got synced. And this sync, like what Aman had mentioned before, the sync works both ways. So even if I add a user in Azure, it will get synced back. And if I add any new user on my on-prem Active Directory, that will get synced in again. We can even change the passwords from any of the portals, be it from Azure as well as from your on-prem devices. Basically, there's a password write back and password synchronization in place, which takes care of all these things. The other tool that we have from Microsoft is called Microsoft Intune, which helps us to group users, deploy application, register devices, and many more features in Active Directory. And I think that's about it, right? I mean, that basically sums up the demo as well. what we did was, just to sum it up, what we did basically was we added a user on our on-prem Active Directory and set up a sync which made with our Azure Active Directory, so that all our users and all the groups and everything and the configuration policies that we have on-prem can be replicated in Azure. So I think that's about the demo, I guess. So if you guys have any questions, we would be happy to answer. If you have any doubts, any questions, please write it in the chat window, and we would be happy to answer any of those questions if you have. Okay, so
Looks like nobody has any questions. But I request all the attendees to share your email addresses in the chat window, and we will send you the recording and the deck. Also, please share the city and state you are currently living in. This information will help us determine the best possible timing for our future webinars. And regarding Azure assessment, it is a Microsoft and Cloud9 joint investment. This is a consulting service available for your organization, and depending on your organization, it may be free, or you may use these consulting hours to get a roadmap to one of these services mentioned, like Azure migration, SQL upgrade, BI and analytics, etc. If you're interested, please email us at c9sales@cloud9infosystems.com, or you can call us at 855-225-6839. Again, thank you for joining us today. We'll look forward to seeing you in our next webinars. Thank you. Have a good one.
thank you.
Thank you so much.